Testing. Testing. All right, so good morning, everyone. And it's around 8:40 in the morning. And this morning I woke up at 8 o'clock and I thought, you know what? I'm going to create the artificial business intelligence open source in the form of Google Documents today, and people can contribute. So I guess we can just get started. So let me just create these documents, and I think we can collaborate on a worldwide basis in order to create a collection of Google Documents, and we can keep improving it, and these Google Documents, which are interlinked, will constitute the artificial business intelligence. So okay, let me just fix a little bit. And what's really great about Google Documents is that people can write comments, and I'll be able to curate those comments so that the artificial business intelligence that is available to everyone will be of the highest quality. So let me just fix the thing here, and we should be getting started soon. So the artificial business intelligence is really a collection of all the business documents that you need in order to succeed in business. And so all the documents you need will be available to you online, and you can make requests, you can contribute, you can do so much with it. And every time you contribute, of course, you're going to be properly credited, so that will be the motivation for people to contribute. So I'm just going to be the curator, so to speak, of this artificial business intelligence. Okay, so now it's set up, we'll get started. I just want to include an image of the Open Digital University over here, and we should be getting started in a couple of minutes. Right here to promote the Open Digital University. So let's get started. This is something that I should have done a long time ago, but hey, it's never too late. Okay, so let's see. Alright, looks perfect. And with the artificial business intelligence, you don't need training or education. It's going to provide training and education for you, but you can actually skip straight to implementation. So what do I mean by implementation? Well, I simply mean that you're going to be able to play the game of business right away, and you can see results, because one of the key principles that I operate by is that, I'm going to put it here, the best way to learn business is to run one. So it doesn't matter how big your business is, even if it's a micro tiny business, I believe that the best way to learn business is to run one. In other words, you've got to set up a business as quickly as possible and start running it, because that's the only way you're going to learn. In the same way that, you know, if you want to learn how to play chess, if you want to learn tennis, basketball, you have to get onto the basketball court, the tennis court. You have to play chess with somebody, preferably somebody who's smarter than you, and that's the only way you can learn. Chess, tennis, basketball. Business is the same. You cannot spend 2 years, or in my case 3 years, at McGill University in a classroom and hope to learn anything about business. You have to put yourself in a situation where you have to make one business decision after another, and then you see the results. At the beginning, you're not going to be very good, but it's like that for any discipline. But the good news I want to introduce to you is that I've created something that I call the business model workout, and using that method, you can focus on 3 things in business. And so I'm going to talk about these 3 things now. The first thing is you got to focus on marketing. Second, you got to focus on sales, and the third, you got to focus on production of value. Production, delivery of the product, service, or value. And by value, I mean, like, you know, it can be content. If you're creating a membership site, for example, you have to deliver value. People have to be able to download or stream your value online, or they can download your product, or you can ship your product to them, mail it to them, you can deliver the service. But that's what the third process is all about. So these are processes, very important. It's a marketing process, sales process, and it's a production or delivery process. And what I mean by process is that it's a series of coordinated steps or activities that produces a specific result or specific results. So that's what we mean by a process. And as long as you continue to process and you don't stop, you will eventually produce a specific result. And so that's how we measure, like scientifically, that's how we measure the performance of each of these 3 processes. Okay, so for short, I'm just going to refer to these 3 processes as marketing, sales, and production. So that's a shortcut. And so in our artificial business intelligence over here, we always have to keep in mind that, you know, the 3 critical processes are marketing, sales, and production. Now, I like the word production because it's hinting at the idea that, you know, you can just manufacture a product ad infinitum, meaning that, you know, there's no limit to, you know, how, you know, we just put it here, production equals limitless production of value or products based on the master copy of the product. So for example, in 1995, Microsoft created Windows 95, and so the first copy of Windows 95 cost millions of dollars to produce, but the second copy, especially on the internet, cost a few cents, right? Because people can download Windows 95 from the internet. Before that, you know, Microsoft had to burn the CD, and then they had to ship the CD, so it cost a few dollars. But with the internet, Windows 95 was delivered, you know, for a few cents. So literally, you know, Microsoft was able to print money because they were printing Windows 1995, and you know, users just had to pay and they can download. So that's what I mean by production. You know, it's the limitless and perfect. Every copy is almost perfect. especially if it's a digital product. So limitless and perfect production or replication of value, product and services. So imagine, you just have to create the master copy, the original copy of a software program, of an ebook, of a video course, an audio program, a software program, a web application. You just create the master copy, and after that, you're literally printing money. And so we're talking about this because I don't want to assume anything about your business background. I want to start from scratch, like as if you were a 17-year-old teenager. So, I want to make sure that even teenagers all over the world can understand what business really is, and then, how together we can create an artificial business intelligence. Because if you don't understand these three basic and critical processes of business, then you won't be able to contribute to this artificial business intelligence, which thankfully is open source, meaning that anyone in the world can make a copy of these Google documents to their Google Drive, and they can modify it as they wish. They can even sell it, but they have to sell the source code as well. The source code means these Google documents. And so, I think it's going to liberate people financially all over the world. So my job really is to curate this artificial business intelligence in the same way that Linus Torvalds would curate Linux, the operating system. So let's get started with these three critical processes: marketing, sales, and production. Now that you have a basic understanding of what business is all about. All right, so just gonna erase this. So if you want to create a marketing process, which is the first step, let me grab my coffee. We're gonna create a document for that. So I'm just gonna, whoops. And so, like I said, you're gonna be able to access this artificial business intelligence, and it's gonna be designed in a way that is easy to navigate. So here I'm gonna put the marketing process, and then we're going to put a placeholder. We're going to put like the first step. What do you have to do? Step 1, and then we're going to put all the different steps, and of course people can comment on these Google documents. And here we're going to put step 2, and of course the marketing process, which basically means lead generation. That's how I define marketing for a small business, because marketing is a broad field, right? But the artificial business intelligence, or ABI, has to be very specific, very practical, implementable. People can use it right away. So that's why we have this procedure in different steps, etc. So we're gonna have, let's say, 10 steps for the marketing process. This is how you generate a lead. So we have to, of course, define what we mean by a lead. So let's do that. So the end result of the marketing process is a lead, and a lead is a potential or probable customer. And there's a statistical difference between potential versus probable. So we're going to say that potential can be, probability of greater than 0%, and this is a probability that it's a real customer. Okay, so probability, let's say, of purchase. So it's greater than 0%. but it's smaller than 100%. So it's really broad, but probable will say that the probability is, I don't know, maybe 50%. This is arbitrary, it can be 40%, but in my case I'm going to put 50%, and this is a probability, and it's lower than 100%. So obviously you want the probable customer, but oftentimes you're not able to predict or estimate the probability of a customer. And so that's why I use the word potential customer. Potential, the probability is much greater. I mean, the range of probability is much greater, but probable customer means that at least 50%. So you probably want to target the probable customers first, right? Because they have a greater chance of becoming a customer. But you don't want to ignore the potential customer, because things might change, and at some point the potential customer might become a probable customer because of something that happens. To give you an example, I'm just going to reduce this, give you more space. To give you an example, somebody could buy my course, let's say on AI, let's say make money with AI, and potentially like 100% of the population, the working population, would be a potential customer. Okay, but let's say that in 2026 January, OpenAI comes out with GPT-6, and it eliminates like, I don't know, 30% of office jobs. Then suddenly all the potential customers of my video course on AI, most of them will go from potential to probable, because now people can clearly see that their job, their career, their profession is at risk, and therefore they're probably going to buy my video course on AI so they can survive financially. So that's a good example of a macro event, or a huge event. OpenAI coming out with GPT-6 is a huge event that turns potential customers into probable customers. But there are also things that I can do as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, to trigger people so that they move from being a potential to a probable customer. Okay, so very important. So that's the marketing process. It's can be loosely defined as anything and everything that you do. I don't care what you do and how you do it, as long as it's legal and ethical, but it's anything and everything that you do to generate a lead. And a lead technically is the name of a person. It can be just the first name. Ideally you want to have the family name also, but I'm just going to put the name, so at least the first name, their email address, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes their phone. The difference is that if they give you their phone, then they're more likely to be a probable customer, because they want you to text them information. They want to be in contact with you closely. But of course, people's phone, they only have one usually. It's very private. They might have different email addresses, but they have just one phone. So they're going to give you their phone only if they're probably going to buy. If they don't give you their phone, that's fine. You can still communicate with them by email, but they're probably just potential. Okay, so always give them the option to give you their phone, because you want to give them the opportunity to signal that they're probable customers. So that's my assumption. If people give you their phone, they're more serious. They really want you to text them information. They want to be able to, they want you to call them. So ideally, not ideally, but typically the more information they give you, the more probable it is that they will buy from you. So let's put that as an axiom. The more info they give you, the more, let's say, serious they are about buying your product. Or we can say the more serious sounds a little bit dramatic, the more interested they are in your offering. Okay, so that's an axiom that I operate by. So yes, absolutely, you should have at least, at the very least, the minimum, you should have their email address. That's the minimum. Sometimes they will give you a fake name or whatever, or even a fake phone number. No, actually, you don't have to give you a fake phone number, because you have to make it optional, right? But an email is the absolute minimum. But in B2B marketing, for example, you want to give them the opportunity to give you, for B2B leads, you want to give them the opportunity to give you maximum information. So typically for a business buyer, you want their name, you want their company name, you want their job title. Very important, because job title reveals their decision-making power and also the budget that they have. So for example, if the job title is Chief Executive Officer, obviously this guy, this girl has a lot of budgetary discretion. Job title, you can ask them about their revenue. So it's going to be a range, like, is your company making over $1 million to 5 million, 5 million to 50 million, etc. So a range of their revenue. Also industry, that helps. And an official website for your salespeople to check them out. So they have to really fill out all of this information if they want the valuable resource that you're giving as, in exchange. So the valuable resource that you're giving them is often known as a lead magnet, and it can be, it can be an ebook, it can be a special report that normally would cost them $500 to $2,000, but they get it for free because they're an executive or a business person, and the website here. Oh yeah, we forgot email. It has to be work email, right, for B2B. So ideally not something like Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail. It has to be work email, and you can check that, because you can check that they have an official website. So the email that they give you, and you can easily verify, it has to be not Gmail. So it can be something like if info, like I have a website called Calligraphy for Everyone. So this would be an acceptable work email. But if I put Peter@Gmail, it's going to reject it. Okay, and the reason for that is that you only want people who have a company. They cannot put their Gmail address, because if they have a company, then you can actually check this company and it's a legitimate company. And this is important, because when you're sending your salespeople to pitch to these executives, these business buyers, the cost of selling is high, because you have to send a salesperson after this buyer. So you only want serious people. Someone who's not giving you the work email, they're not serious, and therefore you have to ignore them. So anyways, they provide their information here, and in exchange they get the valuable resource called a lead magnet. So it can be an ebook, a special report, can be a demo one-on-one. So you meet with them on Zoom. It can be a webinar on Zoom. It can be it can be a pre-recorded webinar on Kajabi or even YouTube. Pre-recorded means that you've done the webinar before, and now it's just a replay of the webinar. It can be a web application. So it can be a lot of valuable resources that you give them in exchange for their B2B information. All right, so what I'm gonna do is, where was I? Okay, so here we have the video course. So this is the marketing process. The marketing process basically is a series of steps, and I'm going to improve it, but it's a series of steps that you execute in order to generate a B2B lead or a B2C lead. So I'm just going to put it here. A B2C lead is just like consumer. So B2B stands for business to business, and here it's business to consumer. So for a B2C lead, it's just name, email, and potentially phone. That's it. but for B2B lead, it's much more complex. Okay, so that's the marketing process. I think we're done with that. So now let's take a look at the sales process, because that's the second critical thing that we have to master. The sales process is critical or not. And what I mean is that depending on your business model, your sales process might be very important, or it might not be important at all, because the selling is done through a sales letter. So for example, if you look at Amazon doesn't have salespeople coming after you. It's all algorithmic, right? You go to Amazon, you search for a product, and you buy, and then Amazon delivers the day after. So there's no selling taking place. There's no salesperson coming after you. So it depends, but more and more the sales process is not going to be that vital, but I'm just going to create it anyways. And so let's see. I'm going to replicate the marketing process, but it's going to be sales process. So as with the marketing process, it's a series of steps, but except that it's sales. So I'm just going to erase everything here. There are many things that are applicable. For example, you can sell to a consumer, or you can sell to a B2B buyer. In other words, a business manager, an executive, etc. And as usual, you have step 1, step 2, step 3 for the sales process. We're not going to get into this procedure right now, but just want to give you the overview. And I'm going to define the steps in the sales process. And I just want to mention that there are basically 22 different, and these are very basic business model, but there's 22 basic business models that you can take a look at, and it's from the book The Profit Zone by Adrian Slywotsky. And Slywotsky is definitely one of the top 10 business authors. His book is one of the top 10 business books that I recommend. So Slywotsky, is that Slywotsky? Okay, Slywotsky, yeah, I think so. So this is definitely one of the top 10 business books. I'm going to recommend more books, but in this book, I've read it over and over. It's brilliant, and he talks about 22 business models, but he doesn't talk about internet business models. So, but you get an idea of these 22 very different business models, and it's going to give you a very strong understanding of what a business model is and how you can design your business model in a way that is suitable for you. But basically, in business school, we learn about like 3 generic strategies that you can perform if you want to succeed. And these 3 business strategies, I don't know how they relate to the 22 business models, but I'm just going to cover them broadly here and call them generic marketing or business. I think it's more or less the same here, strategies. So just for your information, for your education, there's the cost leadership, like you're the cheapest provider, and obviously an example is Walmart. And then there's product leadership, and this is where you're on the cutting edge. So Apple, for example. But Apple is not on the cutting edge when it comes to, maybe when it comes to iPhones, but not when it comes to artificial intelligence. So I'm going to say Apple for smartphones. And OpenAI is on the cutting edge for AI. So it depends on what product category, right? But basically, your research and development, you're really on the cutting edge. And of course, NVIDIA for GPUs or AI chips. And the third generic strategy, and you have to choose one of these strategies. You cannot try to be like a leader in terms of product innovation and also be the cheapest provider. You have to commit. So these are committed strategies. The third one is niche orientation. So you're not the best product like Apple. You're not the cheapest, but you're specialized for a particular kind of small market segment. Maybe one example is Curve. I don't know if they're still around, but Curve is a gym only for women, and you can even go down that, like narrow down that niche. You can, like for example, I think Avon had no, not Avon, Telus created a special division called Kudo, and this is specialized for students and young people who are obviously more budget conscious. So Kudo is just a division of Telus, and it's serving students. But even that, I don't think that it's niche enough, right? Something niche it has to be a very small market. So you can see that Walmart, the market is big. It's not a small market. Apple is more narrow as a niche than other smartphones like Android phones, but it's still not a niche. I mean, Apple sells like millions of phones every year. So niche orientation means that you're specialized in serving the needs of a particular segment of the market. So I'm just going to put it here, specialize in serving the specific the particular needs. So it's not about price, as is the case with Walmart. It's not about capability, as is the case with Apple. It's about the particular needs of a narrow segment of the market. So a company can have different divisions. Each division is serving a particular niche. So Telus, for example, creates Kudo, and it's just a fictitious example, but maybe Telus can create something like I don't know, like Signorio for seniors, because oftentimes people over 65, they have different issues and needs regarding their phone. I'm just speculating here. This division doesn't exist, but Telus, the telecom company, could create Signoro for seniors, right? Etc. So I think you understand the idea of a niche. It's a small market segment, and you have to know everything about that market segment in order to respond to their needs appropriately. So these are the three basic marketing strategies, and you have to commit to one of the three. And within one of the three, you can implement a particular business model. And so I'm going to create a page where I'm going to discuss these 22 business models. So give me a minute. I'm just going to create that page, call it 22 business models. And on that page, we're going to talk about these 22 business models, and people can comment, and because I really want this artificial business intelligence to be like a collaborative project that anyone in the world can participate in. Right, let me just grab my coffee. All right, so we're going to go back to the sales process. So what is involved exactly in the sales process? So the way that I teach it in the professional sales course of 15 weeks, I developed that course for the English Montreal School Board. It's available in French also. And in that course, I was teaching students the 5 basic steps, and you have to practice these 5 steps of the sales process. And as with marketing, it's different for B2B as opposed to B2C. So I'm just going to make a copy. B2C selling is kind of simple. It's not the same. So let me see. I'm just going to start over. So the first step is rapport building. And you'll see that the sales process is very, very simple. I mean, it's not difficult at all. It's just a matter of following the procedure, and if you follow the procedure here, you're not gonna have much difficulty, because people may think that they're unique, but their psychology is very generic. People are human beings, and they tend to they tend to think the same way, and of course you have to adapt these 5 steps in a particular way for each person. And in particular, I'm just going to mention here, but there are basically 4 buyer types. So I'll describe these types later on, but when you look at your friends, you can identify them, you can put them in one of these 4 buyer types, and then based on the type of buyer that they are, you can implement a specific version of these 5 steps. So when I say 5 steps, this is not exactly like a cooking recipe. It is like a cooking recipe, but you have to adapt the recipe or the process depending on the type of buyer that you're talking to. Okay, so I'm just going to put the same thing over here for the consumer sales process. But obviously the B2B sales process is more let's say sophisticated, because when you're selling B2B, typically you're selling to a business manager, and the product might cost more than $1,000. But B2B, typically it's less than $1,000. It could be a few $1,000s, but in general B2B, we're talking about fast moving consumer products. So cosmetics, items in a store, etc. So $1,000 or more. And basically, generically, you have to build rapport, and this is where you build trust. It could be created by your brand name. It's about your reputation, but this is where the salesperson has to be friendly and has to project an image of trustworthiness. So you have to dress professionally, your smile, your handshake, all of this constitutes ways for you to instantly build rapport. And it's important to build rapport to make them feel that they can trust you, that you're a professional, and you're going to behave professionally. So this is very important. This could take a few seconds, but those few seconds are critical because it's a first impression. And that leads us to step number 2, where you can ask them what they need. But they're not going to tell you what they need unless they feel that they can trust you, right? So you have to do each step correctly before you move on to the next step. So this is where you're asking them, for example, are you looking for a computer for home or for work, right? So then they're going to tell you their need. Oh, it's for home. I have kids. I'd like my computer to be able to play video games, etc. So this is what you're asking them about the needs, and also sometimes their budget. If you can tell them, what kind of budget are we talking about? Like, are you looking to spend $1,000 for your laptop or $2,000? So you have an idea of what they need, and that includes the budget that they have. In other words, they need the price to be in a certain range. And then after you know their needs, you can present the relevant solutions, right? You can say, oh, if it's for a family computer where your kids can play video games, I recommend computer A, computer B, etc. So this is where you're presenting relevant, very important, relevant solutions. And the fourth step is objections handling. An objection is typically a reason why they cannot buy. Okay, reason why they cannot buy. And it could be the price is too high. It could be they need more time to think about it, more time to shop. It could be they need to talk to their wife or children or husband. It could be, timing is wrong. It could be, they had a bad experience with that brand or that product before. So the objections handling means that no matter what the reason is for them to not proceed at this point in time, you have to help them to solve that problem. An objection is a problem. It is an obstacle. So you have to tell them, mention the price, mention the competition, why you have a better price. You want to overcome the common objection where they're delaying. And oftentimes it's not so much that they have to talk to the wife or the husband, it's just that they're not sure that this is the right decision to make. So don't take their word for it. They might say also, I need to talk to my wife, but really the objection is that it's too expensive, but they don't want to tell you that it's too expensive because it's a little bit embarrassing, that they can't afford it, right? So they're going to come up with an excuse, but it's not the real objection. Same thing with timing. They might say, well, this is not the right time, I'll come back in a month. But it might not be the timing, it might be the price, something they're embarrassed to mention. It could be they have a bad experience with that brand name before, but then again, maybe it's just an excuse. It's not the real objection. So one of the challenges of this step is that you got to figure out the real objection. Oftentimes people have their own ego, right? They have sensitivity and they're embarrassed. They don't want to mention the real objection why they cannot proceed. So here, in my professional sales course, I train people on how to handle very common objections. People are not going to be very creative with their objection. Typically they're going to have like maybe 3 to 5 objections, which are normal, and then you overcome the objection, and then you can make a closing attempt. A closing attempt means that it's just a short sentence that demonstrates that you have 100% confidence in your product, and you assume that they're ready to buy. And that's what I mean by an attempt. You're not sure, but you just assume, because you are 100% confident, you just assume that they are ready to buy. So you can come up with a closing line like, oh, would you like to pay by cash or credit card? Now notice that it doesn't matter which option they choose, right? They're gonna buy, right? So you're not asking them, would you like to buy or no? Because if you give them the no option, they might say no. So just give them an option where they have to buy. So another closing attempt, and these are very basic. There could be like 20 different closing attempts, but this is very basic. You can say, should we deliver the furniture to your office or home? Or would you like that item in red or blue? I mean, I'm just being very simplistic here, but it's just that you give them like 2 options or sometimes 3 options, but not more than 3. If you give them like 4 options, they go, okay, so tell me more about each option. So that's too complicated. The closing attempt means that you have to verify that they're ready to buy. And oftentimes the closing attempt is not so much, the objective is not so much for them to decide to proceed right away. It's often a way for you to determine, okay, are we ready to make a deal, or are you still thinking about it? And that's why I call it a closing attempt. A closing attempt means that the customer might say, oh, wait a minute, I'm not sure I want to buy yet, right? So it's okay. And then you can say, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were ready. Okay, so did you have any question that I can help you with, right? So oftentimes it's just a way for you to verify you're really at the right stage, because they might be standing there in front of you and they might be scratching their head and they might be thinking, and you can see that they're thinking, right? You're not sure. So when you're not sure, just try to close, because you want the sales process to close as quickly as possible. And oftentimes, when the customer is not sure, they're, let's say, 90% sure, they're never going to be 100% sure like you, right? You know the value of your product. You've seen customers be very happy, so 100%. But in that case, they're going to be like 80% or 90% sure. So you do the closing attempt, and oftentimes, because of your confidence, they're just going to move ahead, because 90% confidence is good enough for them. So for example, when you do the presentation here, they might be impressed. So they might be, let's say, 30% or 40% confident that they're going to buy from you. And when you handle the objections, it's going to increase, from 40% to, let's say, 50% to 70% confidence. And I'm just giving these probability as an estimate. It's not precise like that. So here they go from 30% to 40%, and then you overcome the objections. You can mention something. Oh yeah, no, don't worry about it. Many of our customers have mentioned the price issue before and the timing, but after they buy our product, they were so happy. So when you share that real story, about your own customers, it's going to move them from 40% confidence to maybe 70%. But even 70% is not 100%, right? So you want to increase it to 100%. And so that's when you make the closing attempt. And, after the first attempt, maybe it's going to move them to 90% because they look at your face, your body language, and your voice. They feel that you are confident. And so, it's going to raise their confidence as well. And at 90%, they're probably ready to buy, especially when you mention, look, there's no risk whatsoever. If you don't like it, you can return it within 30 days. There's absolutely zero risk. You don't even have to talk to your wife. If your wife doesn't like it, after we deliver the product, you can send it back and you get a full refund, no questions asked. So when you offer a satisfaction guarantee like that, 90% confidence is more than enough for them to move ahead. So you can see that the sales process, I'm just presenting to you the very basic process that I've synthesized from reading dozens of sales books. You don't have to read those sales books. Of course you should, but you just have to practice these 5 steps. And for the B2B, of course, it's the same 5 steps, but it's much more sophisticated. Like, for example, when you're doing a presentation here, it's not just presenting the product. You have to mention case studies, the return on investment. You might even put the names of past clients that they can call upon. We call them client references. You need a proposal, and so it's more sophisticated. So we're going to get into B2B sales process later on. But you know what? I'm just going to create a copy here, and I'm going to put it like this: sales process for B2B. So that's, if you're selling to businesses. Now we're going to go back to the sales process here. So that's what the sales process is, 5 steps. And, if you want to learn about these 5 steps, what I recommend is just walk into a retail store. Could be a jewelry store. So typically they sell expensive items, and you're gonna watch the sales rep, usually who are very well trained because they're selling jewelry, right? They're not selling clothing or anything that's low price. They're selling jewelry. It's very expensive, and you're gonna notice how they approach you. They're gonna approach you with a smile, like as if they haven't seen you for ages. They're gonna be very happy to see you. Their smile, their face, they are very welcoming. And then they're going to ask you something like, oh, welcome to our store. Is there something I can help you with, right? So they're trying to assess your needs. And after you tell them, oh, I'm looking for, something to commemorate the 5th anniversary of my wedding with my wife. And then, oh, wonderful, congratulations. And then they're going to present to you relevant solutions. Women are very, they love bracelets or necklace or whatever. Or they can say, oh, we have a new collection of jewelry. It's designed by Italian designers, whatever. So they're going to present relevant solutions to your problem because you have a problem. So here I'm going to put problem too. Well, a wedding anniversary is not really a problem, but your problem is you want to find something original for your wife, right? So here they're going to also ask for your budget. If you don't mind my asking, are you looking for something? What's the budget? What's the budget that you're thinking about? And then I'm gonna tell you, oh well, I'm looking for something maybe in the 1,000, 2,000 range, or maybe 2,000 to 5,000 range. So then the salesperson has an idea of what to present, and they're gonna present. Oh, wonderful! We have the latest necklace for only $2,000. That's expensive, by the way, but anyways, for a wedding anniversary, maybe it's not. So $2,000 for a necklace, and then you can object. Oh well, I'm not sure that my wife likes necklaces, or obviously they cannot talk to their wife, right? It's a surprise gift. But anyways, my point is that you can see professional salespeople go through these 5 steps very well. Because they are well trained, right? They wouldn't have a job in a jewelry store if they did not know these 5 steps. On the other hand, you can go to a consumer store like Best Buy, and you can see that sometimes they're struggling at one of these 5 phases. And so, for example, the other day I at a Best Buy store with a beautiful woman I was seeing, and I was helping her to buy a Mac computer laptop. And so, the young guy, he approaches us and he's asking hi, so he makes a very good contact. And after that, like, he just stares at her. He doesn't say anything. Oh, well, because she's beautiful, but I'm thinking in my head, dude, stop staring at her and ask her something to know about what she needs. Ask her, is it for work or is it for home? He didn't ask her, so he didn't proceed to the second step, which is normal, right? So I don't know, maybe he was a junior salesperson, maybe he just got started, but obviously he was not a very good salesperson because he didn't ask for their need. If you don't ask people for their needs, there's no way you can present the relevant solution. So I had to be the one to propose a solution. Hey, let's call her Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, why don't you buy this Air book, and etc. So anyways, you can go to any store and you can have an idea of the skills level of the salespeople. And at the same time, using your phone, you can actually record. It's perfectly legal for you to record the conversation you have with the salesperson, and you can listen to that conversation later on, and that gives you a very good practical hands-on workshop on sales. Yeah. So that's probably the best way to get a free workshop on sales, and you can see that every salesperson will go through these 5 steps, whether they're selling a luxury car, a Benz Mercedes, a BMW car, or whether they're selling a consumer item like a consumer laptop. They will go through these 5 steps. All right, so that's the sales process, the second process that we need to master in business. And now the third process is the production value, and this is typically relatively easy process unless we're talking about a service. A service is a methodology that involves your time, right? So it's more tricky. But if it's a product, it's just a question of manufacturing the product and mass replicating it. But I would say that of the 3 processes, sales is probably the most challenging, and this is where you have to receive high quality training. But fortunately, as I mentioned before, these days the sales process is done strictly online through the landing page, or what we call a video sales letter. So you might not need to have a sales process at all. But it's always good to know the sales process because, even if your business is a digital business where you're selling online, you might still need to sell your business to investors, and you sell your business to new talents that you want to recruit. So it's always good to know about selling because as soon as we have 2 people in a room, one person is going to try to sell something to the other person, right? And so it's important to understand and master the sales process. What I'm presenting to you here in terms of the sales process, it looks simple, but the psychology behind this is very complex. It's just that I summarize it in 5 steps, but in the future I'm going to talk about the psychological knowledge that is involved behind these steps, why we have these 5 steps, how they build upon one another. So that's going to be in a different webinar about consumer psychology and behavior. So even if you don't need to sell in person in your business model, you still need to know the sales process. And one of the key reasons is that if you can sell people, you can sell to yourself, right? Like if you need to make an important decision, or if you need to motivate yourself to do something, you can use this process also to motivate yourself. Of course, you're not going to build rapport with yourself, but you're going to start with, hey, Peter, you need to lose weight, right? So how about intermittent fasting? So here are the benefits of intermittent fasting. So here you talk about the features and the benefits, and then you tell yourself the features and benefits of intermittent fasting from your research, and then you mention your own objection. I might object to intermittent fasting because I might say, well, if I don't eat for 16 hours, I'm going to have low energy, and if I have low energy, I'm not going to be able to teach dynamically and with my typical energetic style. So that an objection I can raise, and then I will handle my own objection. Well, Peter, you know what? Like, if you do copywriting, you don't need that much energy, or you can do intermittent fasting and stop at noon, and then you can start teaching or working from noon. So I know it sounds crazy, right? That I'm raising the objection and I'm handling the objection myself, but it really works. It really works because at one point, Taft College suggested that I develop a project management course and teach it, but I don't have experience teaching project management, although I was a very good project manager. So I had to convince myself that, making the effort to develop the project management course is very useful. It's going to increase my market value as a teacher. So I had to sell to myself the idea that I should start teaching project management. Okay, so that's a very good example. Because I think that the main difficulty that people have in life is not that they don't know what to do. It's just that they cannot convince themselves to do it. And this is so important that I'm going to put it here, because no matter what you want to do in life, you have to be able to convince yourself. So I would say that the main struggle in life is not knowing what to do, but to get yourself to do it consistently. So it's not about a question of information or knowledge, it's a question of self-motivation. The person who is self-motivated will figure out whatever she needs to figure out. She will figure it out. She will know what to do. And these days with ChatGPT and Claude and Manus, it's not a problem of knowledge, it's a problem of action. You can't get yourself to do it. It's the right thing to do, but you can't get yourself to do it. And that's why people are waiting for something like New Year's resolutions, which never works. Because what's the difference whether it's New Year or whether it's a new month or a new day? How about New Day resolution? Like every day when you wake up in the morning, just resolve to do something that day, something important. So it's a question of willpower. It's not a question of knowledge. Like, knowledge is free online. Like, everybody knows everything online. But the successful people are the people who are able to convince themselves to just do it every day. And I really mean every day. Every time that I've succeeded in a field, it's because I've practiced something every day. Every day, not every 2 days, not once a week, like every single freaking day you have to do it. That's how I became a master in many fields. I rose to excellence in many fields because I did it every day. But like I said, you have to sell to yourself. And the only way to sell to yourself is if you learn how to sell to other people, right? If you can sell to yourself, you can sell to other people. If you can sell to other people, you can sell to yourself, because the psychology is the same. All right, that's enough about the sales process. Now let's go back to the main agenda. So the third process we want to cover before I go grab my second cup of coffee is the production delivery. So this tends to be kind of easy. It's not challenging like the sales process. The marketing process is moderate. So marketing process is probably second most challenging, and the production is probably the easiest. I'm generalizing here, but in general it's true. This is the easiest. So let's talk about the production process. Once you understand the production process, you're going to understand like how to print money, like almost, because it's really not that hard. So let me just copy. It's really not hard. It's just a series of steps. So, and usually for a product, it doesn't involve the customer. It's just something that you do. It's a production process, right? It's like a factory. So we're going to have a production process for products as opposed to services. So these are two different production processes. And also production process for B2B is going to be different than for B2C. So and there's a different production process for each of the 22 business models. So let's start with product. Product production is typically easy, right? But for services, it's more challenging. So here I'm just going to put, step 1 and then step 2, etc. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that I'm selling my $100 video course on Teachable. Well, I put the video course on Teachable as a file, and after the customer buys, so here we're going to say the customer makes the payment, and after that they can stream, they can view or stream the course on Teachable. And that's it, and maybe after the course they do an evaluation form, so they can enter the form and they can give me feedback on module 3 is not that good, module 5 is excellent. So the evaluation form is very important because it allows me to continually improve the course, right? So Peter receives the survey results, and then I can updates the low quality modules, and then Peter uploads the new module. So this is a production but also an improvement, continuous improvement process. So I'm just giving you like something very basic here. There are many sub steps, there could be like maybe 20 different steps, but this is the main idea. The customer pays for the course, they consume the course, they give me their evaluation, because you can never assume that your product is perfect. Like even if you're Apple, you can always improve. And then the course creator receives the survey, he updates the low quality modules, and he uploads the new modules, and so new customers will have access to the new course, the new and improved course. So that's fairly simple. For services, it's a little bit more challenging because you're dealing with people, right? Your customers will co-create the service with you. So I'm just going to copy it here. I'm not really into services anymore. Like I used to offer copywriting and business training and business consulting. Nowadays I'm more into digital products like this video course. But I'm going to put the services methodology here because I think it's quite applicable for most people on LinkedIn who generally start with a freelance service. They're not going to create a product the way that I do it here. They're going to offer a service like consulting, copywriting, training, public speaking, etc. So maybe the first step is and this is assuming that you've done a good job with the sales process. So they've bought already, right? So they bought your service and signed a contract for coaching, consulting, training, etc. So the second step could be you ask about their situation, needs, constraints, etc. And then you design the service. It can be coaching, it can be training, consulting, and then you deliver the service to them, and you get feedback while you deliver the service. And that's it. The service can be a coaching program of several weeks, but you get feedback so that you keep improving. Okay, so internally you always keep improving your service for the next person, and of course, getting feedback means that they fill out the evaluation forms, and then you keep improving your service. And maybe at the end you send them the invoice, because when they've signed the contract, maybe they made a deposit of maybe 30%, and then they pay the rest after you delivered service. So here you invoice them for the remaining 70%. I mean, each service is different, but it's very important that you write down exactly everything that you do. It's even more important for services, because by writing the procedure down, you can more easily train your staff in how they can perform that service, right? So it's very critical. And so when it comes to production or offering a service, it's about managing the procedure, managing the process, and it's about documenting the process. So whether it's sales or whether it's marketing or whether it's production, you have to document everything. And one thing I learned from a quality assurance director who was a boss of mine, he said something very interesting. He said, Peter, the essence corporation lies in its documentation. Basically, it means that the intellectual property, the procedures, the documents, everything about your company, the essence of the value of your company lies in its documentation, in the binders, in the documents, the contracts, right? So the documentation is very important. And I want to share with you, maybe I'm going to develop this further, but there's a field called quality assurance. And basically, quality assurance means that you have to do the following 3 steps. Number 1, you have to say what you do. Number 2, you have to do what you say. And number 3, you have to prove it. So in other words, say what you do means that you have to write it down in a document. You have to say it, you have to write it, you write it down in a document. Next, you actually have to do what you said you would do, right? You have to do it. And after you've done it, there has to be documents that prove that you've done it. So do it and check the boxes. It's like a checklist. And after you've done one task, you check off the box so that you know that you've done it. Prove it is simple. Prove it means you have binders containing the checklist that proves that you've done it at a certain point in time. So you put the check boxes and the dates. So this is how you do quality assurance. Quality assurance means that you know what you're going to do, right? So because you're saying it, you actually do it, and you're able to prove it. So if you go through these 3 steps, then you have quality assurance, broadly speaking, in your company. And quality assurance is what it says it is. You provide an assurance that what you're doing is of high quality. Whether you're doing marketing or whether you're doing sales or whether you're doing production, you have to do quality assurance, because that will give you the assurance that you're doing everything correctly, right? So the documentation is super important. So guys, that's it. I think that's it for this morning. I just wanted to introduce to you the basic 3 processes, and as we build this artificial business intelligence together, it's going to be open source, it's going to be free for everyone, and as we focus on these 3 critical processes, you're going to be able to build a viable and successful business for yourself. And I think that that's the main challenge of most entrepreneurs today. They are doing too many things that are not important. They don't have the proper guidance. If you know what you're doing, meaning that if you do only these 3 things, you should be able to achieve success in a relatively short period of time. And that's why this is a workshop I've been teaching for a while. You can check it out at here, Business Model Workout, where I explain the basic principles. But this is something I've been teaching in the last 19 years, and it's still applicable today, even with artificial intelligence. And the basic idea is that business is simple. Keep it simple and you'll succeed. Now, when I say that business is simple, I mean that you have to make it simple. And not only do you have to make it simple by focusing on these 3 steps and practicing them, not only do you have to make it simple, but you have to keep it simple. And this is really hard because there's going to be tons of gurus online. They're going to tell you, oh, no, you have to use my formula. And then another guru says, no, you have to use my formula. So they're all making things complicated for nothing. But you have to be like a black belt master, and you have to maintain a certain discipline to keep it simple. I think that the reason why so many people don't succeed in business is that they make it complex, unnecessarily complex. Business is simple. Keep it simple and you succeed. In other words, just generate leads, just convert them to being a customer and provide 100% satisfaction, so there's zero risk for them, and just deliver the product. That's it. It's so crazily simple that I'm surprised that there's not 8 billion business people in the world. It's really crazy that people are forcing themselves to work as a slave, 40 hours a week minimum, to enrich somebody else. This is crazy. That's why, I would like every parent in the world to receive this kind of training that I just offered you in their own language, so that they really understand what business is all about. Because once you understand what business is all about, it's like you know how to drive a car, and your job right now is like a bicycle. A bicycle is great. Everybody loves a bicycle, but it's not going to get you very far, right? You need to learn business, because business is like learning how to drive a car. Once you know how to drive a car, you can drive any car. Maybe not a big truck, but you can drive any car. And therefore you can go anywhere in the world, right? You just need a motor. You just need a business to run. So that's what I'm hoping for you. I want you to have financial freedom. I want you to be able to work whenever you want to work, with whoever you want to work. I want you to make maximum income, whether it's $1 million, 5 million, 10 million. It doesn't matter. Once you understand what business is all about, there's no limit to what you can achieve financially. So business is really that simple. It doesn't require an MBA. It doesn't require a Bachelor of Commerce, which I have. You just need to do these 3 steps very well. You need to practice these 3 steps over and over every day, and you'll become a business master. And you can basically almost like launch any business, and you'll succeed. So anyways, guys, that's it for this morning. I was very happy to present it to you. I'll continue in the future, but this is the foundation for the artificial business intelligence. It's going to be open source. You can make a copy to your Google Drive, make a copy of all these documents, and you can sell them at any price. You can pocket 100% of the profits. But of course, when you sell these Google documents, it's better if you teach them what I was able to teach you. So you can teach them what I've taught you. You don't have to pay me, just teach them, and you can make money that way. All right, good luck to you all, and I'll see you in the next live stream.